find connections. You find connections, and you need to be entertained by it. To be frank, I am entertained by it quite a bit.
That's that's amazing, and I'm glad I started out with that question about context, because I think that's or about the shock of the culture and the way that you raise context being important. Because I think with respect to creating value, that's really the first step, is to understand the context of the
Oh,
culture
yeah.
that you're working in,
Oh, yeah.
understand what the rules are, the unwritten rules, which are important in any company. And it sounds like you learned very quickly what the rules were in Korea, and for sure a dopamine hit, if I must say. Um, I'd like to ask Mark, so what has changed about value creation? So since your start in working in marketing and sales and Unilever, how has it changed throughout the course of your career to today? Are the fundamentals still the same, and these fundamentals have adapted, or has something radical happened along the way, especially given your context of working in Asia?
So I would say we think about it. You can think about it two ways. One, in more aggregate terms, more macro terms, that I've seen the transformation quite radically from even when I landed in Unilever. Let's say the focus of value creation was very strongly focused on asset, let's say, aggregation. Being, I mean, Unilever, for example, owned the fields where it grew the tea leaves, the supply chain, everything. You were just manufacturing better than anyone else. And I remember when I entered Unilever, they were already selling off a bunch of this. They were going into this transformation, which was more into the intangibles, the brand, the experience. Then I've lived in Asia. When I was in Asia, I mean, obviously, I'm a U.S. citizen, so I've interacted a lot with the U.S. And I was in San Francisco, and you can already see the Uber time. I remember still seeing the first time someone showed me an old iPhone, because it looked very old. Like, hey, there's this thing, you can book a black car. There was that blitz scaling, so you went from asset aggregation to branding or experience. Then this scaling of technologies that existed to new industries, just offer it better than anyone else, cheap. To be fair, at that time, everything was about cost, cost, cost. You had taxis, you had food delivery services that were highly inefficient. And then, to be frank, now the latest leap is the one that everybody hates to hear, because we were all talking about it, AI.
Hmm.
But now it's just really interesting. We were part with a startup I was working with, and we were part of an accelerator, and they started to talk about outcomes, outcomes, outcomes. You're not selling software, you're not selling you're selling outcomes. And this is the massive transformation I see now, that people expect, with the aid of artificial intelligence, with LLMs in the background, that, for example, we were selling a marketing AI tool. And basically what customers wanted is like, what's the outcome? What's the out? Can this help me sell more? That's the only thing. If you can prove this, if you can truly help me, and there's different ways to do this. You can also prove, hey, I'm saving you time, and I'm delivering them. But that's the level of demand that you're getting now. It's before, people is like, hey, can you produce something good for me? And can you create a good experience for me? Hey, can it be faster? And now it's like, hey, can it do my work? This is the insane part that we're seeing. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'm like, it's fascinating. At the same time, your brain, I still have enough brain plasticity that I think I can adapt to this. But 10 years from now, if this change had come 10 years later, forget it. My brain explodes. That's a fact.
Right. I think it's having that effect on everybody, Mark. And this is why I'm trying to understand, in a certain sense, to document the process of how you create value. Because at some point you're going to be hitting a button and it's going to tell you how to create value, or to create value automatically for you, and you'll just somehow watch the revenue roll in, right, without doing anything. But I don't know if that's really the future or not, but certainly some people say it might be. So I'm trying to understand from you, like, if you had to say top one or two lessons that understand the customer and how to create value for them, like, what are they? What would you say is the number one thing of understanding a customer and how to create value for them?
Okay. So I would say it's a little bit, this is where I'm a very analytical person, but this is where it gets a little bit esoteric or abstract. I would say you really, or the beauty of using all these tools, what we're mentioning, that right now you could create value by pressing a button. In reality, you still need to have a lot of imagination. For me, the key concept is imagination. You need to be putting yourself in the so I'm an Excel sheet person. I love looking at the numbers, building, but you need to connect that to the actual situation. Put your head into the situation of, for example, in this latest case, the SME owner. You need to talk to SME owners, but you also need to imagine their situation. What is their current use of AI for marketing, or what is their current tools? How can they do it differently? And how will this change their outcomes? If, for just an example, if you think of an SME owner, you have a restaurant, you're trying to handle the supply, you're trying to handle, and you have to promote your restaurant. You need to get customers. You don't get customers in, doesn't matter how great the food is. You know what I mean? If nothing is going to happen. How can you do this? You're not an efficient marketeer. There's such competition right now, and the amount of digital creation. But you can create a tool that, in the most simple way, just thinking how that person thinks, click a button, start expressing your story, and let the LLM start creating some content that helps express that story. Tell what are your objectives. Hey, I want to be a company, I want to be a restaurant that is for younger people that come out of work and have a drink and have a lot of, okay, that's how the story in the LLM, with a lot of tooling around it, can create content in a way that is relatively simple. And this is a little bit the key aspect of this. You need to get yourself into the situation of how the other person is. It's still about thinking about what people, and eventually we might need to think about how the LLM thinks. So that's the really frightening part, because there are going to be some decisions that we're going to leave to LLMs, and then you're going to stop thinking about how that human thinks. But in the end, it's how the SME owner thinks, how the retailer thinks. When I was in Unilever, you know what I mean? What are they trying to accomplish? How can you help them do their job better? That's the reality. You're always just thinking, get myself into their mind. How am I going to help them create that value? In Unilever, they will always say, and there was this process called the jobs to be done. And it was very annoying because I was very like anarchist. I wanted to do my own thing, but
Mm-hmm.
the lessons were brutal. And one of the lessons was always, you had to end whatever your plan was. Think of that that consumer, and verbatim, what are they thinking? What is the change in their thought process? Hey, I felt uncomfortable with my body, or I felt I didn't have control of my diet, but now I'm using, in that case was ligereza, this new spread that is healthy and helps me energize, and I feel much more in control. That is still, and for hopefully for many years, because that's what I know how to do. That's the key aspect. Or for example, if you're selling some other services, what is the end goal of the CEO, and how are you going to change that person's feeling? You're selling software. How is that person going to feel after utilizing your software? Oh, I'm in control of my business. I'm in control of the finance of my business. I'm in control of the HR of my businesses. It's still that dopamine rush that you're going to drive into that human, and it can't be truly measured. But probably once we all have a chip in our heads, you will probably be able to track. Yes, John, CEO of this company, had exactly that. That electrical current go through the brain, and we achieved our goal. Right now, it's more abstract, but that's kind of the objective. And I think that's the key aspect. That's the thing that I've used for everything. And whenever someone younger, generally, because I'm getting older, in the team says, "Oh no, we're going to do it this way," like, what does the consumer think? What does the end customer think? Have we really solved that problem? Is that person sleeping better, more calmly tonight? Great, we did our job. If not, we're missing something, because they're going to change us for someone who lets them sleep better. And that's a little bit, for me, the aspect. And you build backwards from there. Okay, you want them to feel better. What do I need to build? How is my service? And sometimes you realize you don't have the right service. And sometimes you realize you need to change your approach because you're not delivering. And for example, with AI, I would say that's a really big challenge, because right now a lot of the customers don't know what they want, don't even know. That's the biggest challenge, I would say, nowadays with AI, is so many people are so confused that even if you have an amazing product, they might think, yeah, but there could be something better. You know what I mean? There could be something better tomorrow. Am I getting? it's really hard, I would say, right now to give people peace of mind because they're constantly thinking like, well, there might be something better tomorrow that solves my problem. There might be, but you need to adapt and use this product for now.
Right, right. I think that's a fascinating insight, Mark, and I love how you tie it back to really did you change something for your end consumer? So you got
Yeah,
all the other everything else that you might be thinking about along the way is sort of noise. But if and you got to get through various channels to get to your consumer. Who knows like how your product's going to get to market. But at the end of the day, you have to and make some kind of change in their lives and in the way they see things, the way they think about themselves, the way they think about the product, and that's really what your objective is.
exactly, exactly. Look, it's a self-confidence pill that you're giving your customer. You know what I mean? You're just helping them. You know what I mean? In any form that you're building, in the end, the effect should be that they should feel better about themselves. As simple as that. You know, they should feel more confident in the future, thanks to what you did. It's a little bit too abstract. You know, yeah, I've sold soups. I've sold the digital manufacturing $500,000 machines. I've sold fintech. Anything in the end, that's the end goal. You have to be getting into the other person's mind and like, am I delivering that? And sometimes the product will be less complex, but you're just helping them understand. Oh yeah, don't worry. That's your fear. Don't worry. We'll get you covered. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's not a bunch of flashy features. Is the idea that this is going to help you do your job better. This is going to help you to achieve your own goals. That's the only objective. And if you don't get yourself into the other person's mind, and this is where empathy, you know what I mean? I think it's quite powerful, or it's clearly not in the skill set that now, you know what I mean? If you look at the McKinsey or the Sequoia kind of analysis of new industries, but empathy is just still a super powerful, I would say, skill, because the way you will build. If you build with empathy, it will derive a lot of value. There is a stage in the future where LLMs are making decisions, half of the decisions for us. That's the other risky part for the future.
Right, right, right. So, Mark, thinking through your experience, what's been the best real world example that taught you about value creation? So, a particular product that you helped bring to market along the way, or certain experience, a certain even a project or presentation. What was the best experience that taught you about how to create value?
Oof, okay. Um. So I would say, look, there's a lot of different ones that I've seen, but now I'm having a conversation with a company that helps expand health span. Basically, grow your. Brian Johnson would be the best example. This influencer, this rich tech billionaire who this is spending $2 million a year on his own anti-aging routine. And I'm talking to another company, and it's interesting because I found the connection with 3D printing. The lessons I'm applying come from digital manufacturing. When Hewlett Packard, I was the first employee in APAC. I was digital manufacturing, 3D printing is an industry that could transform manufacturing completely. It hasn't, okay, it hasn't. But the idea is it can produce goods instead of in a factory in a much more customized way through 3D printers. Let's call them 3D printers. It's very challenging because when I was talking to customers at the time, you were asking them about the machine could do this, but you were asking them about the future and in certain future. You wanted visionaries. You wanted people
Hmm.
that thought, I'm not exactly sure this machine can do this right now, but I want to test because I want to go into this path. I see it. Very strangely, value creation can happen without producing anything, because this is what's happening with health span kind of increase or growth. There's a lot of proven value and a lot of preventive task, but there is what Brian Johnson is doing on it. There's a lot of testing for the future. there's a lot of early indicators, but health is very hard to prove. You know what I mean? You need 30 years to be able to prove, oh yeah, this expands. You're like, you can't. But there are early indicators. The same that was happening with 3D printers. There were early indicators that you would be able to substitute a lot of manufacturing processes, and the value was enormous. But there was no proven path for it. So now I'm talking to this company, and the filter for the customers has to be the same. The value creation can only happen if the customer wants to go with you in that journey. That's the reality, because there's no proven path. There's